All right, Hare Krishna, this is the fourth in the series of creating a culture of spiritual growth. Um, Today, the topic is not too attached and not too averse. And this regards our relationship with the material world. And it comes from, there's a verse in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And it's this one. It's Canto 11, Chapter 20, and text number 8. Yajritshaya Madkatado Jatashadastu Yapuman Na Nirvino Nati Sakto Bhakti Yoga Siddhida. If somehow or other, by good fortune, one develops faith, this is Yajritshaya, and develops faith in hearing and chanting my glories, Madkatado, such a person, being neither disgusted with nor very much attached to material life, should achieve perfection through the path of loving devotion to me, bhakti yoga. Mm-hmm. And then in Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on this verse, he says, this person is not overly attached to body, house, and family. He is also not disgusted with the world, for that is the qualification for jnana. Being overly attached to body and house qualifies a person for karma yoga. If he does not have such attachment, he becomes qualified for bhakti. So he's saying that somebody who's very, very attached to the world, right, then they can do karma yoga. And if they're very, very disgusted, then they want to do jnana. So someone says for someone to be properly situated in bhakti, they should be neither too attached or too averse. And yeah, so we're very well versed in the reasons why we should not be attached to the material world. We get a whole lot of that, and just even in the Bhagavad Gita, but all along we'll hear all kinds of things why we shouldn't think that the material world is our final destination, or this is a place where we can be permanently happily situated. We should have something beyond that in our sights. And so just, even in the Gita alone, there's so many things. I'm just going to, throw a few of them at you. It should all be familiar to you anyway, but we'll just take a look at what happens. And so Krishna, even right away, when he starts instructing Arjuna, he has this verse 216, Nasato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sataha, ubayarapi durishtuntas, tvanayos tattvadarshibhi. Those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the non-existent, the asat, the material body, there is no endurance, and of the eternal, the soul, there is no change. Thus, they have concluded by studying the nature of both. So there's sat and asat. Nasato. Sat means existence. That's why it says non-existent, but also it has the connotation of eternity. Right? Krishna is Satchidananda, eternity, knowledge, and bliss. So he said that there are things that are temporary and things that are eternal. And of course, the whole Bhagavad Gita is going to tell us that we need to deal with the eternal. We are eternal, and we want to connect with the eternal. So there's a value judgment here made here with this. And in the purport to this verse, Prabhupada mentions this one because it clarifies things even more. 7.4 Bhagavad Gita, Bhumir apo nalo vayu kamano budrevacha ankara itiyam me bina prakriti ashtada. Earth, water, fire, air, ether. This is like, solids, liquids, radiant energy, um, gases, space, right? These are the basic physical parts of the world. And then you have the subtle physical parts of the world, mind, intelligence, and false ego. Mano buddhir ahankara. And Krishna says, altogether, these constitute my 8 separated material energies. Bina means separate. I ate separate energies. Always used to say that the external potencies or the inferior potencies of the Lord. And then he says, in the next verse, he says, Aparayamitas tvanyam prakritim vidime param jiva bhutam mahabaho yayedam daritayate jagat. Besides these, O mighty armed Arjuna, there is another superior energy of mine, the param, the prakritim param, which comprises the living entities who are exploiting the resources of this material inferior nature. So again, he explains what are the things which are temporary and which are the things that are eternal. Further on. And then in the 15th chapter, it talks about this even more. There's I've got the first two translations of the first two verses here. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "It is said that there is an imperishable banyan tree that has its roots upward and its branches down, and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas. The branches of this tree extend downward and upward, nourished by the three modes of material nature. The twigs are the objects of the senses. This tree also has roots going down, and these are bound to the fruit of actions of human society." This is the material world, is like this upside down banyan tree. It's the image that's being given here. And then 3 and 4. The real form of this tree cannot be perceived in this world. No one can understand where it ends, where it begins, or where its foundation is. But with determination, one must cut down this strongly rooted tree with the weapon of detachment. Thereafter, one must seek that place from which, having gone, one never returns, and there surrender to that Supreme Personality of Godhead from whom everything began and from whom everything has extended since time immemorial. Again, so there's the weapon of detachment. Let's talk about that. We're supposed to become detached from the temporary things and seek out the Lord. And then here in Bhagavad Gita 15:5 and 6, it says, "Those who are free from false prestige, illusion, and false association, who understand the eternal, who are done with material lust, who are freed from the dualities of happiness and distress, and who unbewildered know how to surrender unto the Supreme Person, attain to that eternal kingdom. That supreme abode of mind is not illumined by the sun or moon, nor by fire or electricity. Those who reach it never return to this material world." So again, and then here, this famous verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam in the prayers of Queen Kunti, that again talk about this being detached from the material world. Janmaishvarya Shruta Shribir Idamana Madapuman Narvarhatya Vidatum Vai Dvamakinchana Gocharam. My Lord, your lordship can easily be approached, but only by those who are materially exhausted. The word is a kinchana gocharam. One who is on the path of material progress, trying to improve himself with respectable parentage, great opulence, high education, and bodily beauty, cannot approach you with sincere feeling. And then in the purport to that, Prabhupada explains, he gives a good reason why we need to have this detachment. He says, a materially puffed up person may utter the holy name of the Lord occasionally, but he is incapable of uttering the name in quality. Therefore, the four principles of material advancement, namely high parentage, good wealth, high education, and attractive beauty, are, so to speak, disqualifications for progress on the path of spiritual advancement. The material covering of the spirit soul is an external feature, as much as a fever is an external feature of the unhealthy body. The general process is to decrease the degree of the fever and not to aggravate it by maltreatment. So Prabhupada is saying that the degree of attachment is causing us not to be able to take shelter of Krishna. is with feeling or with some enthusiasm. So so it's really necessary for us to understand. So, and this is what we most people have, right? When people come to bhakti, they're generally too attached. That's most people. There's not so many who are so averse. And so you hear so much about this in Prabhupada's teachings and in the Gita and all throughout the Bhagavatam. Even we're reading the 5th canto in this other place, and where it's talking about this, comparing the material world to this dangerous forest. So it continues on and on. So generally, you have people who are in one way or other too attached, and there's people in the various modes of nature. They're attached in different ways, but they're all too attached. And so here in Bhagavad Gita 14:6, Krishna says, "O sinless one, the mode of goodness, being purer than the others, is illuminating, and it frees one from all sinful reactions. Those situated in that mode become conditioned by a sense of happiness and knowledge." So someone in the mode of goodness, their attachments are not so apparent. Their material attachments are not so apparent, but they come here. Prabhupada mentions in the purport, he says, the difficulty here is that when a living entity is situated in the mode of goodness, he becomes conditioned to feel that he is advanced in knowledge and is better than others. In this way, he becomes conditioned. So he's attached to especially to the ahankara. We talked about Krishna talked about the separated potencies, the 8 separated potencies. And so he's not so attached, the person is not so attached to the physical things outside, but to one's self-image. And so there's attachment here that I'm a better person. I have wisdom. Because of my knowledge, I'm happy, and see other people are suffering more than me. So there's an ego boost that's happening from the mode. So they may live very simply and seem very content, but there's an attachment to the ahankara, one of the 8 separated potencies, that really inhibits them from going further. Someone in the mode of passion is the attachment is very clear. Says the mode of passion is born of unlimited desires and longings. This is from 14:7 Bhagavad Gita, O son of Kunti. And because of this, the embodied living entity is bound to material fruitive actions. And that they have this feeling that they can be successful. That if they're willing to really put their, real whole force into it, they're really dedicated and really persistent, that they will achieve happiness in this world. There's desires that can be fulfilled. So they have an optimistic outlook on this world. They're not happy now, but I think if they achieve such and such and such and such, and they feel they can do that also, then they're trying to do it. They have a lot of energy. And then there's the third one, the mode of ignorance. O son of Bharata, know that the mode of darkness, born of ignorance, is the delusion of all embodied living entities. The results of this mode are madness, indolence, and sleep, which bind the conditioned soul. Now it's interesting, the people in the mode of ignorance are very discouraged. So you might think that they're averse or disgusted. But what's really happening with them is they have so many desires. What disgusts them is they do not think they can attain them. So they really want material success and happiness, but they just don't think they're going to get it. And so they lose their enthusiasm when they pout. Basically, they try to escape in various ways. There's intoxication and sleep, but they're disturbed because they really want to be successful in this world. And if they're given a chance, and they have dreams sometimes, so it says they dream of that sort of thing. They hope that somehow something will change. Somehow they'll be discovered, or they'll win the lottery. Something will happen to change their circumstances, even though they don't have any realistic expectations. So they're really attached. They may look more renounced, because they don't have any energy. They don't accumulate things. They may live simply. and they'll say, oh, they'll talk negatively about the world. Or they're just mad at it because it's not giving them what they want, but they really want everything. So they're still actually too attached. Somebody who's really detached, who's averse to it, the Gyanis, they think that the world is just a fraud, that it's always going to cause misery, and so their only thought is to get out of it. See, those in the mode of ignorance, they want to escape through chemicals or intoxication or sleep. They can't muster the what it takes, the renunciation and knowledge to actually escape the world like the Gyanis do. Now, despite these things and so many other instructions about the lower level of the material world, the non-desirability of it, Krishna, as you see, and we will see in Bhagavad Gita, he keeps telling Arjuna that he should act in the world. And this is interesting. He doesn't say you should just give up on it. He tells him again, and he starts out in the third chapter. He says, not by, this is a chapter 3, Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, text 4 and 5. He says, not by merely abstaining from work can one achieve freedom from reaction, nor by renunciation alone can one attain perfection. He says, everyone is forced to act helplessly according to the qualities he has acquired from the modes of material nature. And therefore, no one can refrain from doing something, not even for a moment. Because Arjuna, he doesn't want to fight. He wants to just leave the battlefield, and he says he wants to live by begging. He says he can't deal with the circumstances. And so Krishna is not advising him to do that. And then he goes a little further in 6 and 7. He says, one who restrains the senses of action, tries not to act, but whose mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender. On the other hand, if a sincere person tries to control the active senses by the mind and begins karma yoga in Krishna consciousness without attachment, he is by far superior. And so again, he says, if there's, because Arjuna has attachments, you see, he doesn't want his family to die, and so his wanting to just to go away is not because he's self-realized and therefore above anything material. He's suffering because he doesn't want all of his relatives and his teachers and things. He doesn't want this whole destructive thing to happen. So he's attached. And so Krishna is saying, if you're still attached and you try just to withdraw, so you won't be successful, you're a pretender. He says, the mind will continue to focus on the things you're trying to renounce. You won't be successful. So he tells him, so he's telling you, the first one is you are not prepared to leave your duties in the world because you're still too attached. And then he goes later on and he says, okay, now, but somebody may be self-realized. He says, but for one who takes pleasure in the self, capital S, whose human life is one of self-realization, and who is satisfied in the self only, fully satiated, for him there is no duty. So this is someone even, beyond the mode of goodness, or at least a very, very rarefied one. He says, a self-realized man has no purpose to fulfill in the discharge of his prescribed duties, nor has he any reason not to perform such work, nor has he any need to depend upon any other living being. So he says, okay, if you were in that situation, you wouldn't need to act. But he says there's no reason not to do it either. And he says, therefore, and this is Krishna's conclusion in 3:19, therefore, without being attached to the fruits of activities, one should act as a matter of duty. For by working without attachment, one attains the supreme. Right? So again, even if you're self-realized, Arjuna, you still should act in the world. Comes again. And then there's, after that, there's the chapter on yoga, right, where someone can has a chance to see the super soul directly. He says a yogi is greater than, this is from chapter 6, 46 and 47, text 46 and 47. And Krishna says a yogi is greater than the ascetic, greater than the empiricist, and greater than the fruitive worker. Therefore, O Arjuna, in all circumstances be a yogi. And he says, and of all yogis, the one with great faith who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service to me, he is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. That's my opinion. So, and after this comes this chapter 7, where Krishna really starts to talk about bhakti. And so this is really why Krishna is always talking about acting, because bhakti is an action. We talked about that. There's the Krishnanushilanam. There's actions that we perform directed at Krishna. There's the Anukulyana with the good feeling. But we act. That's what we do. And so you see Krishna always in the Gita. He comes back to, yeah, okay, if you're self-realized, you don't have to act, but you should act anyway. And even if you're into yoga, where you're going to meditate and do all this kind of stuff, he said, well, you can be a better yogi if you abide in me, think of me within yourself, and renders transcendental service to him. So this is the best type of yoga. And then Prabhupada, in the 4th chapter of the Gita, in his purport, he says, he clarifies this more. He says, the more the activities of the material world are performed in Krishna consciousness or for Vishnu only, the more the atmosphere becomes spiritualized by complete absorption. The absolute truth covered by Maya is called matter. Matter dovetailed for the cause of the absolute truth regains its spiritual quality. Krishna consciousness is the process of converting the illusory consciousness into Brahman, or the Supreme. So the inferior energy can be converted to the spiritual energy through proper action. Okay, so it's clear, right? The less we're attached to the world, the better. That is, completely unattached would be excellent. But the less the attachment, the better. But then why shouldn't we just go all out and say, be disgusted with it? Well, part of it's why, because we're going to act in this material world. We're going to be using it because we can convert it. And we'll hear, you can go further. There's a lecture in the Bhagavad Gita from 66 in New York where Prabhupada talks about, we hear a lot of this stuff too, right? So our problem is that we are suffering all kinds of miseries on account of this material body repeatedly, just like we give up this dress and take another dress. Similarly, we shall continue. Then the 4 kinds of miseries: janma, mrityu, jara, vyadi, birth, death, old age, and disease, right? Or at least these 4 kinds of miseries, the miseries of birth, the miseries of death, and the miseries of old age, and miseries of disease, we have to suffer. All right, so we hear this about the material. It's a place of suffering, the 4-fold miseries. And then he says in a lecture on the Bhagavatam in 68 in Los Angeles, so he says, so long we have got anxiety, there is no question of happiness. And other things, just like the 3-fold miseries. Miseries means we have got 3 kinds of miseries. Miseries pertaining to the body, pertaining to the mind, and pertaining to other people with whom we have got connection, and pertaining to the nature's disturbance. And then in the prayer we sing before prasadam, it starts out this, right? Oh Lord, this material body is a lump of ignorance, and the senses are a network of paths leading to death. Right? So so we're supposed to understand, right, that our destination is not here. That we're trying to change the way, change the type of existence we have. We're trying to spiritualize ourselves and the environment, so that we can kind of we can be compatible with the spiritual environment. We're trying to change ourself from a material to a spiritual environment. That's what it's going to take to enter into the spiritual realms. We have to repolarize ourselves, right? And spiritual. So that takes us acting in the world. And so all these other things, these things that speak badly about the material world, especially as a destination, are meant to, free us from so many of our desires to think because we're thinking, many of us, we're thinking that this is our only life. And then Krishna is saying, you have so many lives. And many of us thought in the beginning that this was all there is. That the kind of happiness you can get here in this world is the only kind of happiness. We don't know about the soul. We don't know about transcendence. So the idea was to change our conception, to inspire us and to solidify our decision in practicing bhakti. But if we're too averse, if all we're thinking about is how this material world is miserable in so many ways, how it's horrible in so many ways, how it's the inferior energy in so many ways, then all these impressions are going to make it difficult for us to act in the world. We're always going to be thinking, we're going to be more in the escape mode than the engagement mode. Right? We're thinking, how can we get here? We're chanting Hare Krishna. We're hoping if we close our eyes and chant really hard, we'll open up our eyes and we'll be in the spiritual world. Or we'll hear Krishna's Leela. Right? And somehow, if we really hear it forcefully enough, we'll just be there. But what's got to happen is we have to change it's like our polarization from enjoyment to service, and from kind of selfishness to being connected with Krishna. Bhakti is a transformation. The biggest difference between the material world and the spiritual world is it's like a polarization. And so here in this world, Krishna is giving us that instruction that we should act using all these inferior potencies, our body, our mind, our intelligence, and the world around us, to use it and begin to become servants of Krishna, to connect with Krishna, right? To begin to act in a spiritual way. And that we do right here with this inferior energy. And when we have properly harmonized ourselves with the spiritual environment, then we're suitable to go there. Until then, we're not. And so if we're just thinking, oh, it's so miserable here, it's so terrible here, miseries, it's very difficult. It may even subconsciously take away some of our enthusiasm for practicing bhakti. So we need to have enough detachment, right, so that we give ourselves space for bhakti and have faith and enthusiasm for bhakti. But if we're just thinking, oh, every minute I'm here in this world is terrible, then it unconsciously or consciously really cause us to be not very enthusiastic about being here. When can I be out? So I'm thinking more of escape than the engagement that I need, the activities that I need, in order to change my way of being, to make myself ready for a spiritual environment. So we do have contrary type of considerations of the material world. Not just that it's horrible and terrible, and but that how it shows how it's connected with Krishna. And so we have them. You'll notice in the Bhagavatam, there's multiple descriptions of the creation. Why does it talk about that? Why doesn't it just talk about the spiritual world? Right? There's the universal form in the second canto, and another universal form description in the 12th canto. Why did they do that? Why did they do that? If this material world is useless. In the Gita, there's the 10th chapter. For all Krishna's, Arjuna has to ask about his vibhutis, all of his powers in the world. Arjuna says, how can I remember you? There's, there's the universal form again, the form of time in the Gita. And then there's other things we're going to look at here, to balance out this circumstance and make us be able to first we want to be detached enough, but if we're too averse, it's going to affect our ability to act in this world. Oh, it's so terrible here. Oh, it's so terrible here. Oh, I have to be in this material world another day. Instead of, wow, here's an opportunity, right, to spiritualize this my circumstances. Here's a chance to come closer to Krishna. Here's a chance to really fix this situation. And Krishna wants us to use these energies that we're given in his service. That's what he wants. So I thought we'd look at a few things. So I think we have to do this. And we've been talking about how we have to kind of look in the heart a little bit and see what our inner landscape is. What are the things? What is our reasons for faith? What is our reasons for doubt? What is our motivation for service? What is my good feeling towards Krishna? What are really my objectives? And really be looking at those things. And so I think I'm going to give you some little purports and verses, and there's so many others available. I can just give you a few things that hopefully can make us not be too averse to the material world, so that we're paralyzed or hampered in our desire to be engaged. We don't just want to curl up someplace and hope it all goes away, but we engage with it and feel some comfort in doing that while not being attached to it. So it's interesting, in the very first verse of the Bhagavatam, in Prabhupada's purport, it says in the text that Krishna is directly and indirectly cognizant of all manifestations. And so Prabhupada explains it here. He says, since the complete whole, or the absolute truth, that's Krishna, is the source of everything, nothing can be independent of the body of the absolute truth. Whatever happens to the body quickly becomes known to the embodied. And then here I've highlighted this. Similarly, the creation, this means this material world, is the body of the absolute whole. Therefore, the absolute knows everything directly and indirectly that happens in the creation. So we know that Krishna has his own spiritual form in the spiritual world. Okay? But this creation is like an extended body. That's what Prabhupada's comparing it to. The creation is the body of the absolute whole. So we're a soul and we have a body. So Krishna has his own spiritual self, but in one sense, this is like an extended body of Krishna. So Prabhupada's comparing it. And it says, just like whatever happens to the body quickly becomes known to the embodied. Right? So I can feel my body. If something happens to it, I feel it. I'm embodied. Right? So Krishna, he can feel everything in this creation because it's like an extended body of his. So he's much closer than we think in that way. Krishna can feel what's happening. He has super consciousness, so he can be fully engaged in his pastimes in the spiritual world. Plus, he can be this, he can do that. So, what if we think about that? That this is like the extended body of Krishna. Again, that shouldn't make us want to say, "Oh, let's stay here forever. Let's try to, let's forget about Krishna." No, but make us feel a little better about being here while we're practicing bhakti. And then in Bhagavad Gita, we read the previous verses about this, where he said that there was the 8 separated potencies, and then the param prakriti, the superior energy. And so he says in 7.6, he says, all created beings have their source in these 2 natures. Of all that is material and all that is spiritual in this world, know for certain that I am both the origin and the dissolution. So these are all him also. And then he says, and Prabhupada says in the purport, he says, this material body is developed because spirit is present within matter. A child grows gradually to boyhood and then to manhood because that superior energy, spirit, soul, is present. Similarly, the entire cosmic manifestation of the gigantic universe is developed because of the presence of the supersoul Vishnu. So he's like the soul of the universe. And there's if you look in I'm not sure which canto it is, but in the Bhagavatam, one of the times where it's describing creation, it describes the universal form is there, and all the demigods are entering into the universal form. They're kind of integrating into their particular spaces, but it says it doesn't get up, it doesn't function. Seems like all the parts are there, but it's not functioning. And until the super soul goes inside, it says it doesn't get up, it doesn't awaken, it doesn't start to function. So when the super soul comes, it gives life. Just like there's like a dead body there, and then life force comes in and then it starts to operate. Right. So the whole universe is functioning because of the presence of Vishnu, of the Lord in his Vishnu form. It's the life of the universe. Otherwise, it just sits there. It's inert. So all the movement, all the activity, all the integration, this is a sign of Krishna's life force being present here. It brings Krishna closer if we think about these things. So I think these are things like we can kind of think about those. We can open our hearts and try to say, what if it's like this? And that shouldn't make us want to stay here longer. It shouldn't want to make us think that we could be successful here. Because we're thinking of Krishna, it should make us want to be more deeply connected with Krishna. But we need to do that from where we are situated now. And so we need to not feel so terribly averse to the world. And then in Bhagavad Gita 7:8, he says, "O son of Kunti, I am the taste of water, the light of the sun and the moon, the syllable Om in the Vedic mantras. I am the sound in ether and ability in man." Now, Prabhupada indicated, right, that you could, at the taste of pure water, that's Krishna. But also when he talks about this, the taste of water, and then the next one he talks about when he talks about these things like taste of water or the smell of the earth, these kind of things, there's the different elements: ether, air, water, fire, and earth. Each one has a distinguishing characteristic. It says in ether space, there's what you can perceive. It's called the tanmatra. What you can perceive is sound. So sound is there. And with air, there's sound and there's touch. You can feel when the breeze blows on you. Right? With fire, there's sound, touch, and then there's form. With water, sound, touch, form, taste, and then earth has a smell. So even the various elements, the defining characteristic of each element he says is himself, is Krishna. You can see him in the elements. And then a beautiful one, 7:7, he says, "O conqueror of wealth, there is no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread." So Krishna's holding us. Krishna's holding us, supporting us. We're resting on Krishna's, just like pearls on the thread. So you're not so far away in that sense. Then in 7:9, he says again, he goes, "Original fragrance of the earth. I am the heat and fire. I am the life of all that lives." I like that one in particular. You can see so many living beings around. You go outside, there's so many living. He's the life of all that lives. That's Krishna. That's an interesting meditation. I am the penances of all ascetics. And then 15:12, The splendor of the sun, which dissipates the darkness of this whole world, comes from me. And the splendor of the moon and the splendor of fire are also from me. And Prabhupada has a beautiful purport, he says, from this. He says, so if one can understand that the light and splendor of the sun, moon, and fire are emanating from the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, then one's Krishna consciousness will begin. By the moonshine, all the vegetables are nourished. The moonshine is so pleasing that people can easily understand that they are living by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. Without his mercy, there cannot be sun. Without his mercy, there cannot be moon. And without his mercy, there cannot be fire. And without the help of sun, moon, and fire, no one can live. He says, these are some thoughts to provoke Krishna consciousness in the conditioned soul. And he says, I enter into each planet, and by my energy, they stay in orbit. I become the moon and therefore supply the juice of life to all vegetables. And in the purport, it's indicated that without Krishna being present in the planets, they would just turn to dust and would float away. So when you're standing on the solid earth, it's because Krishna's energy is holding it together. And the nourishment we get from vegetables is coming from Krishna. And finally, he says, and that's what he says. Here is the purport. He says, it is understood that all the planets are floating in the air only by the energy of the Lord. The Lord enters into every atom, every planet, and every living being. This is discussed in the Brahma Samhita. It is said that one plenary portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Paramatma, enters into the planets, the universe, the living entity, and even into the atom. So Krishna is every place. And he's the life force that keeps things moving here in the material world. So there's so many ways. And he says also in 15:14, I am the fire of digestion in the bodies of all living entities. And I join with the air of life, outgoing and incoming, to digest the 4 kinds of foodstuffs. So we can't even digest our food without Krishna's help. So if we're thinking how the spiritual world is far away and Krishna is far away and we're stuck in this terrible, miserable place, it's really miserable because of our misconceptions about it. So if we've decided to take up bhakti, if we've given up, super attachments to the material world, then we need to see how Krishna is present in so many ways in this world. Not so that we want to stay here forever, right? But that we can be enthusiastic in engaging with these quote inferior energies in order that we can become recalibrated from a material being to a spiritual one. We'll be acting in the spiritual way, so therefore we are in harmony with the spiritual realm. So we need to know the downsides of this place so that we don't get attached. So we do need to not be too attached. But if we're too averse, we're gonna be so caught up in, oh, it's so miserable, it's so terrible. When can I get out? When can I get out? That it'll inhibit our ability to do the things necessary to enter the spiritual atmosphere. So I think we have a tendency, I know when I read the Bhagavatam, or even probably when I do it now, I have a tendency, you want to see Krishna's Leela. You want to hear about the spiritual world. You want to do that. You want to see what Krishna's spiritual body is like. These are important things to do. We want to do that. But then to kind of gloss over the places where Krishna shows how he's deeply connected with the material world. Because that isn't as exciting in one sense. And that's true enough. It's not quite as exciting. I wanted to get past all that when I was reading the Bhagavatam for the first time. Because, I wanted to see who God was. I wanted to see what was happening. But now I'm beginning to appreciate more the need to hear about the creation, how Krishna's creating everything, how it works, how he's present in so many different ways. There's even more here, I guess, in the he says in 15:15, I'm seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. Right? So he's functioning. with us, part of our regular functioning as the super soul. By all the Vedas I am to be known, indeed I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. And then, yeah, here in chapter 9, he says, "By me in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. And yet everything that is created does not rest in me. Behold my mystic opulence. Although I am the maintainer of all living entities, and though I am everywhere, I am not part of this cosmic manifestation, for myself is the very source of creation." So that's not, he's not only this, he's also his transcendental part. That's all right. And then he says, "Understand that as the mighty wind blowing everywhere rests always in the sky, all created beings rest in me." It's another one like where we're resting on him. He's like the space where everything is there. And then he's like, we're resting on him like a necklace. The pearls of a necklace rest on the thread. And then here, just one last one. This comes from the 12th canto, where there's another, they call it here the Mahapurusha, but it's another universal form description. This is just one of two of the verses. Canto 12, chapter 11, verses 14 and 15. "The club the Lord carries is the chief element prana, incorporating the potencies of sensory, mental, and physical strength. His excellent conch shell is the element water. His Sudarshan disc, the element fire, and his sword pure as the sky, the element ether. His shield embodies the mode of ignorance, his bow named Sharnga, time, and his arrow-filled quiver, the working sensory organs." So when we can, so there's ways that if we add this to our meditations, we'll be reminded of Krishna just by our life force. That's the Krishna's club, the life force, prana, where you have this sensory, mental, and physical strength coming from Krishna's club. So I guess so. Anyway, this is my thesis here: is that that I think we have a tendency to be because we initially are too attached. We have to focus a lot on all the reasons to be unattached to this world. But if we're going to take up bhakti in a very sustainable way, we can't just focus on that and become too averse, where it paralyzes our ability to act in the world and with our bodies in Krishna consciousness, where it puts us into this kind of depression. And so in that way, we have to balance it out. So we know what our purpose is and our destination is and all that. That's fine. But that we don't think that somehow we're completely cut off from Krishna. It's just a terrible situation. But actually, it's a wonderful opportunity that we're being given. And if we have the right consciousness, we can feel connected with Krishna in so many different ways. That doesn't mean again, that doesn't mean that we don't still remember Krishna in this transcendent form and all of that. That certainly is part of it. But sometimes we want to only do that. So we think how wonderful the spiritual world is, how the Leela is, how that's wonderful, and then just how terrible this place is. So we need to know the difference in value, and we need to know what our destination is, but we have to know how we get there. And how we get there is through, it's like Krishna is acting in this world with these separated potencies that make up our bodies and our gross and subtle bodies and make up the world around us, and engage with that. And if we can see how Krishna is the soul of the universe, and so all these different things we talked about. So I think it takes a little time. We need to digest some of that, right? Again, to open our hearts and to have it change our vision, right? Because Prabhupada said that was supposed to be the Gita is the changing our way of seeing things. Prabhupada says the Gita is the culture of buddhi, the intelligence, the way that we see things. And so that's it's more a place of wisdom more than just in our head. So I think we have to take account of these different other descriptions of the world and Krishna's connection with it, and kind of integrate it into ourselves, so that we won't feel so isolated and disconnected and stuck in just a miserable place. But we'll have the energy and enthusiasm to want to engage with it for the right purpose. Okay, so I think that's what I have for you today. I think we sometimes we manage to be both, still too attached. Maybe we could afford to be, more unattached, and at the same time too averse, because we're focusing only on the miseries instead of the opportunities and the deeper presence of Krishna. All right. All right. So other questions or comments or complaints or corrections, Elijah?
I just wanted to say that this is a really good class for me today. Just being sick all the time and chronically ill, like really sick. It's hard not to uh hate the material world and everything in it and what's going on. But it's good to know that, like, when I go to doctor's appointments or whenever I can barely get out of the house, to be able to kind of look around and look at people and then nature and this concrete city and kind of look at Krishna and everywhere around me and know that, not everything is horrible. And um it's I could get myself caught up in um the sickness and physical aspect of my life and forget that there's a whole creation of beautiful things out there, so this is really good for me tonight. Thank you.
Oh, great. Yeah, because you don't have to be told how miserable things can be. You kind of have that presented to you graphically all the time. So yeah, that's good. Sachin Krishna Prabhu, see your hand is up.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for the class. As always, it's great. I have one comment and one question. My comment is that it kind of reminds me of Yukta Vairagya, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy that you use everything in Krishna's service, whether it's a microphone, it can be used for evil, or it can be used to broadcast kirtan and so forth. So everything as being an energy of Krishna can be utilized in Krishna's service. So there's no purpose of being detached or attached because everything is Krishna's. I think Srila Prabhupada once said that too. What is yours anyways?
Yeah,
To be
right.
attached to. So that was your lecture kind of brought me to that conclusion. My question is, there's a nice balance you're saying one must strive for in attachment, being attached in some ways and detached at the same time to the material world. Correct me if I'm wrong, but then
you can be, ideally we are completely unattached to it, but we're just not disgusted with it. So, but if we're too attached, that'll really hurt our bhakti. And if we could do it to be completely unattached, that's just fine. But the problem is that then it tends to we go to being disgusted with it. The nirvana, as it said, the disgusted or being completely averse to it, and then it's difficult for us to make use of it, to do the yukta vairagya, because it's just too terrible.
So then we should just kind of say, we're in this world. Okay, fine. Make the best use of a bad bargain.
Well, that's what we have open to us. How are we going to get? Because if you just do jnana vairagya, renunciation and knowledge, and withdraw from the world, how do you come to service? And so what we're trying to do here is connect with Krishna. We're active in the spiritual world. The spiritual world is active. There's bhakti, so we can do that here. And then right now, we're not enough in touch with our own souls to be able to do that on a spiritual level. So we use the equipment we're given to prepare ourselves for that eventuality of transcendent service. And so
if you look at, okay,
yeah.
So if you look at Srila Prabhupada and say Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, both were detached from the world but not averse. Is there any differences between the two of them and the lecture you presented in terms of being detached, or it's the same? Am I making sense?
Well, of course, with the Babajis, we're talking, people who are deeply realized. Generally, those persons are really deeply realized. So they have a choice also. So Prabhupada and Siddhanta Saraswati, Bhaktivinoda Saraswati, they chose to basically die on the battlefield, as Prabhupada called it. That they could withdraw more from the world and kind of deal more with Leela and this kind of stuff. They had the capacity. Bhaktivinoda Saraswati, he took time out. I can't remember how many names he chanted, but he took some years living in a little kutir, just chanting continuously. He had that capacity. But they both felt the calling to help others. And so that was why Prabhupada really, 10 years, 10 billion names, as Krishna Prabhu says. So he did that, but he ended up wanting to interact even in a spiritual way with the world, because he was wanting to follow Lord Chaitanya's desire and mission to help others. So they were powerful in the helping energy. So those people were on the perfect stage. And so therefore they can kind of do what they want to do. Their sadhana is over, and so they can do as they choose. Where we're practicing sadhana, we don't have so many choices like that. But in our close line from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati to Prabhupada, they were really intent on serving Lord Chaitanya and carrying out his mission to help other souls. And so they stayed active until the end, more active in the world.
Thank you.
Anything else?
One quick question, if nobody else has one. You talked about owning a house. Don't be too attached to not owning a house and so forth, and being attached to that. But owning a house and some of these things are necessary. You're saying don't over endeavor to get something you can't afford and things like that, or is that?
That was Prabhupada. Actually, I think it was Vishnacharya Bhai Thakur. Don't be too attached to house and family and stuff. So again, they're attached means, that you're thinking this is what makes your life. This is a goal of life. And so the other thing is we have the example of Raghunath Das Goswami, who didn't want to spend any time to make himself a little hut to do his bhajan in. And then when the other Goswamis saw that in the heat, Radharani was coming and covering him with her cloth to keep him from suffering in the sun. And yes, Sanatana Goswami, and then that Krishna was also protecting him from a tiger. And so he criticized Raghunath, says you don't want to make Krishna and Radharani into your servants just because you're too averse for doing anything for yourself, right? And so in that way, we provide for ourselves. Even he was in such a deep level of bhakti. Even don't make Krishna and Radharani serve you. So you take care of yourself. So there's no problem with having the necessities of life, and you have to decide, kind of what your balance point is, But ultimately, we have to be convinced that we have a higher destination, right? That we're a soul that has this connection with Krishna, and that this isn't our eternal home. We also have to consider how much we're able to dedicate ourselves to our bhakti, So this is wisdom in that sort of thing. Dr. Madhava Prabhu, I see your hand is up.
Can you hear me?
Yes, clearly.
Okay. I would definitely have some questions, but I had modem problems during the class, so I had unfortunately, my modem dropped me out of the class, parts of it. But do you have a new mic setup or something? I'm hearing your voice a little high, and I'm wondering if it's my computer or.
No, I think it's a new mic.
Yeah, your voice sounds a little high. It sounds a little speeded up. Yeah, it doesn't sound natural. It doesn't sound like what I normally, I hear you. I know your voice well from hearing classes, and yeah, it just sounded a little high pitched on this class.
It's audible though. Everything otherwise is okay.
Yeah, it's audible. It's just a little. It sounded a little speeded up. It was what it sounded, or a little high. But the perennial question, I'll give you the. I don't know if I should do this. Because I get different impressions from different devotees. Burijan, for example, in his Surrender Unto Me, he says, as soon as there's the thought of enjoyment, immediately captured by Maya. So, I relate so much to the, your description of the modes, and the different effects they have, or the different ways your mind goes if you're affected by those modes. And I completely identify with that. And I even heard a Gaudiya sannyasi once say, it's about lightening the color of the modes, our endeavor. So, I just can't relate to this idea that we are not struggling. Maybe we're in the boat of transcendental knowledge, and Krishna's taken a personal interest. But it's still our free will is whether, what decisions we make, what offenses we make, what, or we have these attachments. So it's this attachment aversion thing. So it's like we seem, and I seem to be erring on the side of aversion, too much aversion.
I think a lot of us have
then-
that because we had to have a heavy dose of all the negativity about the world, because otherwise we thought it was so good. It's so good, we wanted
Yeah,
to keep it.
Prabhupada kind of leaned, he kind of leaned on that a little bit.
Because that's what we were,
kinda-
because we were so unbalanced in that way that it took a lot, a lot of dynamite to
Right,
kind of blow that
right.
away. So there was a lot of continuing emphasis on that,
right.
So now I'm saying
But
we probably need
you're-
to come back into balance a little bit. Hopefully that having
Exactly.
affected us sufficiently
Exactly.
so that now that we can have a little
Right.
balance.
Right, exactly. Yeah, fanaticism I don't think it's serving anyone very well.
I don't think ever. I don't think ever it's helpful.
I have the captions turned on, and it's perfectly translating everything you're saying.
Wow, it's getting too
So
intelligent.
I don't know why. I don't know why that some of these what are these programs that convert audio to transcripts? Why they aren't as good as this caption I'm looking at? It's perfect. I don't know why. Why can't you just turn your classes into transcripts? And even Ramananda is pretty techy. He says, "Good luck," and he's a techie, So I don't get it. That this is still some sort of a rhythm, We've got all this artificial intelligence and all these bells and whistles. They can't transcribe speaking. It's crazy.
All right, so anything more? We're a little past our time. there's something else, then we can do it, but otherwise I'll let you back to your lives. Keep you unnecessarily. All right, well, thank you all. And we got what, 4 more sessions? And I think next one is equal vision. So we'll tackle the topic of equal vision, which comes in so many times, but I don't think we necessarily integrate that so successfully. So we're going to do that next time. And then there'll be, and after that is, what is it? Compressed, suppressed, repressed, and depressed. And after that will be, what is it? The devotional service is individual, voluntary, and spontaneous. And then we'll have like a little summary, a little sum up or something in the last session. So that's what that's what's coming ahead. So anyway, thank you all, and we'll see you next time. I'll send out the recordings as always. So anybody who wasn't here or wants to hear it again can do so. So Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Terrible.